I found my sister Victoria holding my grandmother's fountain pen, the only thing I had left of her, twirling it between her manicured fingers like a cheap ballpoint from a hotel lobby. "Oh, this?" she said, catching me frozen in the doorway of what used to be my bedroom. "Mom said I could have it." "You don't mind, do you? I need it for my book signing next week." She smiled, all perfect veneers and calculated innocence. "You know how important this is for me." My book signing, my manuscript, my 3 years of work. But this wasn't my first life, and this time, I knew exactly how this story ended. "Keep it," I said, watching her eyebrows raise in surprise. In my previous life, I'd fought her for that pen. I'd screamed and cried and begged, and she'd accidentally dropped it down the garbage disposal while Mom watched with her arms crossed, telling me to stop being so dramatic over a cheap old pen. This time, tucked safely in my purse, was the contract I'd signed this morning with Whitmore and Associates, one of the most prestigious literary agencies in New York. I'd used a Mont Blanc Meisterstück 149, a $2,200 pen that the senior agent, Margaret Whitmore herself, had handed me with shaking hands after reading my manuscript. "Really?" Victoria's smile faltered just for a second. She'd expected a fight. "That's surprisingly mature of you, Emma." "I've grown up a lot lately," I said. 25 years in my previous life plus 23 in this one would do that to a person. I let her keep the pen, let her think she'd won something that mattered. Because I knew something Victoria didn't. In exactly 8 days, her entire world was going to collapse, and I was going to be there to watch it burn. The first time I lived this life, I died at 25 years old. Alone in a studio apartment I could barely afford from pneumonia that I'd ignored for 3 weeks because I couldn't miss work at the call center. I'd been dead for almost 2 days before my landlord found me, after neighbors complained about the smell. Victoria didn't come to my funeral, neither did our mother. My father sent flowers but didn't attend. He'd remarried years ago and started a new family that didn't include the disappointing daughter from his first marriage. I'd woken up on my 18th birthday, gasping in my childhood bed, 7 years in the past. At first, I thought I was having a nightmare. The faded wallpaper with the roses I'd begged Mom to let me paint over, the scratchy sheets I'd forgotten I'd once slept on, the sound of Victoria's laugh echoing from downstairs. That particular laugh that meant someone was about to be the target of one of her jokes. But it wasn't a nightmare. The calendar on my wall read September 15th, my 18th birthday, the day everything had started to go wrong the first time. I'd spent the first life as Victoria's shadow. We were only 14 months apart, but you'd never know it by how our mother treated us. Victoria was the beautiful one, the talented one, the daughter worth investing in. I was the reliable one, the one who could be counted on to babysit, clean, work part-time, to help the family, while every spare dollar went to Victoria's acting classes, headshots, designer clothes for auditions. "Emma just isn't star material," Mom would say, not even trying to whisper. "But that's okay. Not everyone can be special. She'll find her place." My place, apparently, was in the shadows, paying for half the rent while Victoria pursued her dreams. Loaning her money I never got back, covering her shifts at the restaurant where we both worked, then watching her take credit for my table's tips. The pen, Grandma Rose's fountain pen, had been the only thing I'd asked for when she died. Victoria got the jewelry, the vintage clothes, the things that could be sold or worn to get compliments. I got an old pen that Victoria called scratchy and weird. Until she decided she wanted it, it happened on my 23rd birthday the first time around. I'd finally started writing seriously, staying up after my shifts to pour my experiences onto the page. I'd finished a manuscript, a contemporary fiction novel about two sisters, one favored and one forgotten. It was raw and honest and probably terrible, but it was mine. Victoria found it on my laptop, read it. And then, 2 months later, she announced at a family dinner that she'd started writing a novel and had even found an agent interested in seeing it. I'd been so stupid, so naive. I'd actually congratulated her. I didn't realize until I saw her manuscript, my manuscript, with her name on it and just enough words changed to make it plausibly deniable that she'd stolen everything. My laptop had mysteriously broken and been thrown out by Mom during a cleaning spree. all my backup files, gone. When I confronted her, Victoria had cried. Actually cried with our mother standing right there. "I can't believe you'd accuse me of this," she'd sobbed. "I showed you my draft. I asked for your opinion. Just because yours wasn't good enough doesn't mean you can claim mine is stolen." "Victoria's been working so hard on this," Mom had said, her voice cold. "I've seen her writing every day. You, on the other hand, have been moping around, jealous of your sister's success. I think you need to apologize." I'd tried to fight it, tried to prove the book was mine, but without evidence, without anyone who believed me, I had nothing. Victoria's book deal went through. She got a modest advance, $15,000, and suddenly she was a published author, appearing at local libraries and bookstores, playing the role of the literary ingenue. The book flopped, of course. Victoria wasn't a writer. She didn't have another book in her. But by then, I'd given up. Stopped writing. Taken extra shifts at the call center where I'd ended up after dropping out of community college to help with bills. Stopped answering my, family's calls. Disappeared into the gray, exhausting monotony that eventually killed me. But now I was back and I remembered everything. I remembered which of my ideas Victoria would try to steal. I remembered that our mother would accidentally destroy my laptop in 3 months. I remembered every betrayal, every casual cruelty, every moment where I'd been erased for Victoria's benefit. And this time, I was going to do things very, very differently. The morning I woke up in the past, I'd laid in bed for hours, just processing, testing my memories, making sure I wasn't going insane, but everything was too vivid, too consistent. I knew things I couldn't possibly know otherwise. I knew that Victoria's new boyfriend, Marcus, would propose in 6 months and cheat on her 4 months after that. I knew Mom's favorite vase would break at Thanksgiving when she and Dad got into a screaming match. I knew that Dad's construction company would go bankrupt in 2 years, not because of the economy, but because his business partner was embezzling. I knew all of it, and I was going to use it. But first, I had to protect myself. I got out of bed and went straight to my laptop, my old, battered laptop that wouldn't be destroyed for another 3 months. I created 3 separate cloud storage accounts with different email addresses Victoria didn't know about. I backed up everything, my journal entries, my story ideas, the first chapters of what would become my manuscript. Then I started writing, really writing. I'd spent my first life afraid to take up space, afraid to be too much, too loud, too ambitious. I'd rationed my dreams, made them small enough to fit in the cracks of Victoria's life. Not anymore. I wrote every night after my part-time shifts at the bookstore, a job I'd taken this time instead of the restaurant where Victoria worked. I wrote about sisters and betrayal and favoritism. But this time, I wrote it better, deeper. I had 7 years of pain and perspective that I hadn't had before. I avoided Victoria as much as possible. When she asked to borrow money, I said no. When she wanted to use my car, I claimed it was broken. When she tried to look at my laptop, I kept it password protected and never, ever left it unattended. "You've been really cold lately," she said one night, 3 months after my rebirth. We were both home, a rarity. Mom was at her book club, and Victoria had cornered me in the kitchen. "Is something wrong?" "Just busy," I said, not looking up from my tea. "Busy with what?" "You don't even go to school." There was that edge in her voice, the one that meant she was about to say something cutting disguised as concern. "Mom's worried about you. You're always locked in your room. It's not healthy." "I'm writing." "Writing what?" "A novel." Victoria laughed. "You? A novel? That's great. But you've never been the creative type. Maybe you should focus on something more realistic, like finishing your associate's degree." I smiled at her and I saw her falter. I'd never smiled at her like that before, like I knew something she didn't, like I was holding all the cards. "Maybe you're right," I said. "I'll think about it." I didn't think about it. I kept writing. By month 6, I had a complete manuscript, 85,000 words of polished, emotional, carefully crafted prose. I'd used every spare dollar from my bookstore job to hire a freelance editor, someone I'd found online, in a different state, someone Victoria would never know about. By month 9, I'd researched literary agents obsessively. I knew which ones were open to submissions, which ones represented books like mine, which ones had recently signed authors in my genre. I sent out my first query letter on a Tuesday morning before work, then another and another. I got rejections. Lots of them. Form letters mostly. But I'd expected that. Publishing was subjective. Timing mattered. Persistence mattered. And then, 3 months ago, month 18 in my new life, I got a different kind of email. Dear Miss Emma Chen, it began. Thank you for your query for the favorite daughter. I'd like to request the full manuscript. It was from Margaret Whitmore, one of the most respected agents in literary fiction. I'd read that email 17 times before I could make my hands stop shaking enough to respond. Margaret Whitmore called me 6 weeks after I sent the full manuscript. Emma, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I have to tell you, I've been in this business for 35 years, and I haven't been this excited about a book in at least 10. Your manuscript is extraordinary. It's raw, it's honest, and it's going to make people uncomfortable in the best possible way. I'd like to offer you representation. I'd cried, actually sobbed into the phone like the 23-year-old I appeared to be, not the 48-year-old I was inside. Yes, I'd managed. Yes, absolutely yes. Wonderful. I'm going to set up a call with my contracts team, and then we're going on submission. I have 3 editors in mind already who I think will fight over this. She wasn't wrong. 2 weeks on submission, and we had 4 offers. Margaret scheduled an auction. By the end of it, I had a 2-book deal with Redmond Press, one of the big 5 publishers, for $175,000. $175,000. I'd made $24,000 a year at the call center in my previous life. Margaret had invited me to her office to sign the contracts. She'd handed me the Mont Blanc pen with a grin. For luck, she'd said. My mentor gave me mine when I signed my first big author. Now I'm passing the tradition on to you. I'd signed every page feeling like I was signing myself into existence. The best part? My family had no idea. I'd moved out a year ago after saving enough from the bookstore and some careful sports betting. Knowing the outcomes of major games 7 years in advance was an unfair advantage I wasn't too proud to use. I had a small apartment in the city, an hour away from Mom and Victoria. I'd stopped answering most of their calls. When Mom called me selfish and ungrateful, I just shrugged and said I needed space to figure out my life. They thought I was a failure, a disappointment, the daughter who couldn't hack it. They had no idea I'd just sold a book that would hit the New York Times bestseller list in 8 months. Margaret was sure of it. She'd called it lightning in a bottle. But Victoria had just made a crucial mistake. She'd called me last week, her voice sugar sweet. Em, oh my God, I've missed you. I know we haven't talked much, but I really want to reconnect. Are you free for lunch this Saturday? I'd agreed, curious about what she wanted. We'd met at a trendy cafe she picked, the kind with $18 salads and intimidatingly minimalist decor. Victoria had shown up in head-to-toe designer, courtesy of Marcus, her wealthy boyfriend who worked in finance. So, she'd said after 15 minutes of small talk, I wanted to run something by you. You know I've always been creative, right? And I've been thinking, I want to write a book. That's great, I'd said neutrally. The thing is, I don't really know where to start. And I remember you mentioned you were writing. I was thinking, maybe we could work together. Like, you could help me develop my ideas, and I could use my connections. Marcus knows some people in publishing, and we could co-write something. We could even make it about sisters. How amazing would that be? I'd smiled. That does sound interesting. Really? Her eyes had lit up. Oh, Em, that's perfect. I was worried you'd be weird about it. Okay, so I was thinking you could do most of the actual writing. You were always better at English class. And I'd handle the creative vision and marketing. We'd split it 50-50, obviously. Obviously. Why don't you come over to Mom's this weekend? She'd continued. You could bring your laptop and we could start brainstorming. I'm thinking something really commercial, you know? Romance, maybe? Those books sell like crazy. I'd agreed. Set a date. watched her practically vibrate with excitement. She was planning to steal from me again. I could see it in every calculated smile, every casual suggestion. She wanted access to my laptop, my ideas, anything she could repackage as her own. But this time, there was nothing to steal. My manuscript was with my publisher, the contracts were signed, and in 2 days, the day before I was supposed to come brainstorm with Victoria, my book was being announced. Redmond Press was going big with the marketing. Trade publications would run the deal announcement. My author photo and book description would hit Publishers Marketplace. Every major literary agent and publisher in the country would see it, including I'd made sure the one Victoria had contacted 3 months ago, fishing for representation for a novel she was working on. I'd found the email thread on her laptop, left carelessly open. During that lunch, when she'd gone to the bathroom, she'd pitched the agent a book about two sisters, one favored and one forgotten, and the complicated dynamics of family betrayal. My book, the book she hadn't written, the book she was planning to extract from me piece by piece over the next 6 months. The agent had responded with mild interest. "Send me pages when you have them," she'd written. Victoria didn't have pages, but she'd been planning to by using me. The day of the announcement, I went to work at the bookstore like always. My phone buzzed constantly, texts from Margaret, from my editor, from the publicity team. The announcement had gone live at 9 a.m. By 10 a.m., it was trending on book Twitter. By 11 a.m., 3 film production companies had reached out to Margaret about adaptation rights. By noon, my mother called. I let it ring. Victoria called 17 seconds later. I didn't answer that one either. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up Publishers Marketplace. There it was, my announcement, with my author photo, a professional shot I'd paid for months ago, and the deal description. Emma Chen's The Favorite Daughter, a searing literary novel about two sisters locked in a toxic cycle of favoritism and betrayal, examining how family dysfunction shapes identity and the cost of being seen. To Samantha Reeves at Redmond Press in a significant deal, in a 2-book deal by Margaret Whitmore at Whitmore & Associates. Significant deal, that meant 6 figures. Everyone in publishing would know I'd landed a major contract. The phone rang again. Mom, I answered this time. "What the hell is this?" she said, skipping hello entirely. "Victoria just sent me some article about you selling a book. This is a joke, right? Some kind of scam?" "It's not a scam, Mom. I sold my novel. It's being published next fall." "You don't write novels. You work at a bookstore." "I do both." "And you didn't think to tell your family, your own mother?" "It didn't come up." "Didn't come up?" Her voice went shrill. "You sold a book, if this is even real, and it didn't come up? What the hell is wrong with you, Emma?" "Nothing's wrong with me. I just handled my business privately." "Victoria is devastated. She said you two were supposed to write a book together. She said you stole her idea." There it was. I'd been waiting for it. "I didn't steal anything," I said calmly. "I wrote this book over the last 2 years, alone. If Victoria told you we were collaborating, she was mistaken." "She said you've been working together for months. She said—" "Mom," I cut her off. "I haven't been working with Victoria on anything. I wrote my manuscript, submitted it to agents, and signed with one of the best in the business. That's what happened. If Victoria claims otherwise, ask her to show you pages. She's written. Outlines. Anything with her name on it." Silence. "This is ridiculous," Mom finally said. "You've always been jealous of your sister. Now you're successful, supposedly, and you can't even be happy for her. Happy for her about what? She hasn't done anything? She was writing a novel. She told me about it months ago." "Then where is it?" Another silence, longer this time. "You know what?" Mom's voice went cold. "Don't bother coming to the house this weekend. Victoria doesn't need your negativity." "Neither do I." "Okay," I said. "Okay, that's all you have to say?" "What do you want me to say, Mom? You've already decided I'm the villain here. Nothing I say is going to change your mind." She hung up on me. I set my phone down and got back to work, shelving returns and helping customers. My hands were steady, my heart rate was normal. I'd expected this, all of it. This was exactly how it had gone the first time, just in reverse. Around 3 p.m., Victoria texted me. "We need to talk, now." I responded, "I'm at work until 5. "This can't wait. You know what you did." "I wrote a book, that's what I did." "Bullshit, that was our book. We were working on it together." I took a screenshot of her text. Then I called Margaret. "Emma, everything okay?" she answered on the first ring. "I need to document something. My sister is claiming we co-wrote my manuscript. I want to make sure there's a paper trail showing that's not true." "Jesus. Okay. Forward me all communications. I'll loop in Redmond's legal team. Have you signed anything with her? Any contracts, agreements, even casual emails discussing collaboration?" "Nothing. I have emails and texts from last week where she first proposed working together, and my manuscript was already sold by then. It's all documented." "Good. Send me everything. We'll handle this." I forwarded her the texts, the emails from last week's lunch, everything. Then I blocked Victoria's number. She showed up at the bookstore at 4:30. I saw her through the window before she came in, her face blotchy from crying, her hair uncombed. She looked unhinged, which was so unlike the carefully curated version of Victoria she usually presented to the world. "Emma!" She burst through the door, ignoring the customers browsing near the front. "How could you do this to me?" My manager, David, immediately moved toward her. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to lower your voice." "She stole from me." Victoria pointed at me, her hand shaking. That book was my idea. We were writing it together." "Victoria," I said calmly, "I don't know what you're talking about. I wrote my manuscript alone over 2 years. We talked about maybe collaborating on something last week, but that never went anywhere." "Liar, you know that's not true. You've been showing me pages for months." "Really? Then you'll have those pages, right? With your notes on them, your edits?" She opened her mouth, closed it. "Or maybe you have your own writing from this alleged collaboration? Chapters you contributed, outlines you created?" It was on your laptop, you know it was." "My laptop that you've never had access to? The one that's password protected?" Her face crumpled. "Emma, please, don't do this. We're sisters. We can work this out. You can add my name to the book. Co-authors, we'll split everything. I won't even ask for more than 30. There's nothing to split, Victoria. I wrote it. I own it. And honestly, you need to leave before my manager calls the police." "The police?" She let out a hysterical laugh. "You've lost your mind. Mom was right about you. You've always been jealous, and now you're having some kind of breakdown. Ma'am." David was beside her now, his phone in his hand. "You need to go, now." Victoria looked at me, really looked at me. And for the first time in both my lives, I saw something like fear in her eyes. "I'll sue you," she said. "I'll prove that book is mine." "With what evidence, but?" I asked. "Please, Victoria, try." She left finally, slamming the door hard enough to make the bell jangle violently. David turned to me. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Family drama." "That was your sister?" "Unfortunately." He gave me a sympathetic look. "Take your break. You've earned it." I went to the back room and checked my phone. 7 missed calls from Mom. 12 texts. I didn't read them. Instead, I opened my email. Margaret had sent me a message with the subject line, "We have a problem, but a manageable one." My stomach dropped. The email read, "Emma, your sister Victoria just contacted me claiming co-authorship of The Favorite Daughter. She's making serious allegations about theft and collaboration. I've forwarded everything to our legal team and Redmond's attorneys. They want to speak with you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. In the meantime, don't communicate with her or your family about this. Let the lawyers handle it. These kinds of claims pop up more often than you'd think, and they almost never go anywhere. But we need to take it seriously. Stay calm. You have every email, every draft, every piece of documentation on your side. She has nothing but her word." I exhaled slowly. This was fine. This was expected. Victoria had always been predictable in her desperation. I texted Margaret back, understood, I'll be there at 9. Then I went back to work, shelving books and helping customers. Waiting for my life to officially begin, the meeting with the lawyers was exactly as tedious as I'd expected. 3 hours of going through my entire writing process, proving every step of my work. I showed them my cloud storage files with timestamps, my payment receipts to my freelance editor, my query letters sent to agents, all dated months before Victoria claimed we'd started collaborating. This is straightforward, the lead attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Carol, said. Your sister has no case. She hasn't produced a single piece of evidence that she contributed to this work. No drafts with her name, no emails discussing plot or characters, no paper trail at all. If she tries to file suit, we'll have it dismissed immediately and potentially countersue for harassment. What if she claims I stole her ideas? Verbally? I asked. Then she'd need to prove those conversations happened, and prove that your work is based on those specific ideas. Given that your manuscript was completed and submitted to agents before you even spoke to her about writing together, the timeline alone disproves her claim. Margaret leaned forward. Emma, I want you to understand something. This is not uncommon. When someone gets a big deal, especially someone young, family and friends sometimes come out of the woodwork claiming they contributed. It's ugly, but it's part of the business. You did everything right. You protected your work, documented your process, and kept clear boundaries. Your sister is trying to take advantage of your success, and she's going to fail. I nodded. What happens next? We send her a cease and desist, Carol said. She stops making these claims, or we pursue legal action against her for defamation and attempted fraud. This ends here. It did end there, legally speaking. But Victoria wasn't done. Over the next week, she launched a campaign on social media. She created a Twitter account and started posting about how her abusive sister had stolen her novel and was using family trauma for profit. She gained some traction. There's always an audience for stories about young women being victimized by publishing. She posted screenshots of our text conversation from last week, carefully cropped to remove the dates and context. She claimed we'd been working together for over a year. Some people believed her. A small but vocal group started hashtagging #Justice for Victoria and tagging Redmond Press, demanding they drop my contract. Redmond's publicity team handled it perfectly. They released a statement. Victoria Chen's claims have been thoroughly investigated by our legal team. Ms. Emma Chen has provided extensive documentation proving sole authorship of The Favorite Daughter, including time-stamped drafts, editorial correspondence, and query letters, all predating any alleged collaboration. Ms. Victoria Chen has produced no evidence supporting her claims. We stand behind our author and her work. Then they did something brilliant. They moved up my book's release date and announced a pre-order campaign with a special edition cover. The publicity from the controversy had actually generated massive interest. People wanted to read the book that had caused such a scandal. Pre-orders went through the roof. Redmond increased my print run from 50,000 copies to 150,000. They scheduled me for a national book tour, and they commissioned a second, even more expensive cover design for the paperback release. Victoria's social media campaign collapsed when journalists started actually investigating her claims and finding nothing. A few published pieces titled things like When Family Members Claim Your Success and The Dark Side of Literary Fame, False Authorship Claims. One particularly thorough investigative piece by a respected publishing journalist pulled apart Victoria's timeline and interviewed my freelance editor, who confirmed I'd worked with her alone 18 months ago. The article ended with a damning paragraph. Victoria Chen's claims fall apart under the slightest scrutiny, raising questions about her motivations and whether this is a pattern of behavior within her family dynamic. Victoria deleted her Twitter account 3 days later. But Mom wasn't done. She showed up at my apartment on a Tuesday evening, letting herself into the building behind another tenant. I opened my door to her knocking, already exhausted. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into my tiny living room. Hello to you too, Mom. Don't be smart with me. She turned, her arms crossed. Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? I wrote a book. You humiliated your sister. You've made us all look like monsters. I've had people at my job asking me about that article, asking if I'm the neglectful mother in your book. Are you? Her face went red. Oh, this. How dare you? After everything I've done for you. What have you done for me, Mom? I was surprised by how calm I felt. Specifically, because I can tell you what you've done for Victoria. You paid for her acting classes, her headshots, her portfolio. You gave her the car when I had to buy my own. You let her live rent-free while I paid you $400 a month. You believed her every time she lied about me. So what exactly did you do for me? I raised you. I put a roof over your head. That's the bare minimum of parenting. That's not doing something for me. That's just not neglecting me enough to get arrested. You ungrateful little... She stopped herself, breathing hard. Victoria is destroyed. She's been crying for days. She had to move back home because Marcus broke up with her. Because he found out she tried to steal my work and realized what kind of person she really is? Because you turned him against her with your lies. I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder. Inside were printed copies of every documented conversation, every timestamp, every piece of evidence my lawyers had compiled. Here, I said, handing it to her. This is proof that I wrote my book alone. Proof that Victoria tried to take credit for it. Proof that she lied to you, to me, to everyone. Read it or don't. I don't care anymore, but stop calling me a liar when you've always known, that Victoria is the one who can't tell the truth. Mom took the folder but didn't open it. So that's it? You're just gonna throw away your family for some book? You threw me away a long time ago, Mom. You just didn't notice, because I was still useful. I was the one who could be relied on, who didn't cause problems, who paid bills and babysat and covered shifts. But I was never the daughter you bragged about. I was never the one you believed in. So yeah, I'm done. I'm done being the family's afterthought. If you needed attention that badly, you could have just asked. I did ask. My voice cracked, surprising both of us. I asked for help with college applications. You said we couldn't afford it and then paid for Victoria's acting workshop the next week. I asked you to come to my creative writing showcase in high school. You said you had to work and then showed up to Victoria's play the same night. I asked you to believe me when Victoria stole Grandma's pen and you told me to stop being dramatic. I asked, Mom, over and over. You just never listened. She stared at me, the folder clutched in her hands. Get out, I said quietly. I'm done with this conversation. Emma, get out. She left finally, and I locked the door behind her. I didn't cry. I'd cried enough for this family in my first life. Instead, I opened my laptop and read the email from my editor. The marketing team wanted to do a feature with Publishers Weekly about debut authors to watch. They wanted to photograph me in my apartment, surrounded by books. I said yes. 6 months later, The Favorite Daughter hit the New York Times bestseller list at number 4. 3 weeks after that, it hit number 1. The reviews were extraordinary. A devastating portrait of family toxicity. Chen writes with the precision of a surgeon and the empathy of a sister. Impossible to put down. The film rights sold in a highly competitive bidding war for $800,000. My second book, the one I'd already delivered to Redmond, had pre-sold to 14 foreign markets, and today was the official launch party. Redmond had rented out a historic library in Manhattan. The room was packed with industry people, booksellers, journalists, and influencers. There was an open bar and catered food and a string quartet playing in the corner. Margaret found me near the champagne table. How are you feeling? Surreal, I admitted. Get used to it. You're about to be very, very famous. She clinked her glass against mine. I'm proud of you, Emma. You've handled this whole mess with more grace than most adults twice your age. I had good lawyers. You had good boundaries. That's what saved you. She paused. I heard your sister tried to contact you again? Her lawyer sent a letter to my apartment. Margaret had it intercepted by her team. Victoria was demanding a portion of my royalties, claiming emotional distress from being written about. Carol destroyed it. Victoria doesn't have a case, and even if she tried to file, she'd be laughed out of court. Your book is fiction. The characters are not her, regardless of what she wants to believe. Good. I took a sip of champagne. Is my family here? No, we didn't send them invitations. Perfect. The reading went well. I'd chosen a passage from the middle of the book, the moment when the protagonist realizes her sister has been sabotaging her for years and decides to stop being complicit in her own erasure. People laughed in the right places, gasped in the others, and applauded loudly when I finished. Afterward, during the signing, a woman approached me. She was maybe 50, with kind eyes and a designer handbag. Emma Chen, she said. I'm Caroline Mercer. I'm a literary scout for several major studios. Oh, I think we've corresponded over email? We have, but I wanted to tell you in person. Your book is extraordinary. The character work, the emotional honesty, it's exactly what we need right now. I've already sent it to 3 directors who I think would kill to adapt it. Thank you. That means a lot. I also wanted to say, she hesitated. I read the articles about your sister. My sister did something similar to me 20 years ago. She claimed I'd stolen her business idea, dragged me through a lawsuit that cost me everything. I understand what you've been through, and I'm sorry. But look at you now. She gestured around the packed room. You won. Don't ever forget that. I signed her book with a message. For Caroline, who understands, may we both keep winning. Around 9 p.m., as the party was winding down, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Emma, it's Victoria. Please, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Can we talk? I miss my sister. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I blocked the number and turned back to the party, where Margaret was introducing me to an editor from the Times who wanted to do a profile piece. Emma Chen, the editor said, shaking my hand. The writer everyone's talking about. How does it feel? Like I'm finally taking up the space I was always meant to occupy, I said. And I meant it. The paperback release happened 8 months after hardcover publication. By then, The Favorite Daughter had sold 400,000 copies. It had been on the bestseller list for 26 weeks. The film adaptation had been greenlit with an A-list actress attached to play the protagonist. I'd moved to a bigger apartment in a better neighborhood. I'd paid off my student loans, the small amount I'd accrued from community college, in one payment. I'd donated $50,000 to a literacy program for underprivileged kids, and I'd bought myself a pen. Not just any pen, a Mont Blanc patron of art homage to Ludwig II. $30,000 of handcrafted perfection with a solid gold nib and intricate Baroque detailing. It was absurd and indulgent and completely unnecessary. I loved it. The paperback launch was smaller, more intimate. A bookstore event in Brooklyn, the kind of place with floor-to-ceiling shelves and a cat that wandered between the aisles. Maybe 200 people showed up, which felt like a miracle. I was signing books at a table near the front when I saw her. Victoria standing at the back of the store, half hidden behind a display of staff recommendations. She looked different. Smaller, somehow. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her clothes were ordinary, jeans and a sweater, no designer labels visible. She looked tired. I finished signing the book in front of me and excused myself, walking to the back. Victoria, she jumped like she'd been caught doing something wrong. Emma, hi, I didn't think you'd see me. Kind of hard to miss you. You're literally standing in my sightline. Right. She laughed, but it sounded hollow. I just wanted to, I don't know, see you, apologize. I've been wanting to reach out, but I know you blocked my number. I did. I deserved that. She looked down at her hands. I deserved all of it. What I tried to do to you was unforgivable. I was jealous and desperate and stupid, and I almost destroyed everything you worked for. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, but I am. I studied her. She seemed sincere, but Victoria had always been a good actress. Why are you here? I asked. Because I read your book. She pulled a worn paperback from her bag, my book. the pages dog-eared and annotated. I finally read it, really read it, and I saw myself in the sister character, the villain, and I realized that's who I've been to you. Not just about the book, but our whole lives. I was the villain in your story, and I didn't even know it. Or maybe I did know it, and I just didn't care. And now you care? Now I have nothing left to lose by caring. Her smile was bitter. Marcus left me. Mom barely speaks to me anymore. Turns out she only liked me when I was successful and making her look good. I don't have a career. I don't have prospects. I'm 24 years old, and I'm a cautionary tale about what happens when you try to coast on other people's talent. That's not my problem, Victoria. I know, I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm not asking for anything, actually. I just wanted you to know that I get it now. I understand what I did to you, and I'm sorry, that's all. She turned to leave. Victoria, I said, and she stopped. Did you bring your copy of my book for me to sign? She looked at the book in her hands, then back at me, confused. I didn't think you'd want to. Give it here. She handed it over, her expression wary. I took out my Mont Blanc, the $30,000 one, the one that probably cost more than her car did now, and opened the book to the title page. I wrote, "For Victoria, may you learn to write your own story. Emma Chen." I handed it back to her and she read the inscription, her eyes filling with tears. Emma, that's all I have for you, I said, not unkindly. I'm glad you're reflecting on your choices. I hope you find a way forward that doesn't involve using other people. But I don't have room in my life for you anymore. I hope you understand. She nodded, clutching the book. I do, thank you, for this. And so, congratulations on everything, you deserve it. She left, and I watched her go. Margaret appeared beside me. Was that her? Yeah. How do you feel? Free, I said. I feel free. The rest of the event passed in a blur of smiles and signatures and conversations about craft. By the time it ended, my hand was cramping and my face hurt from smiling, but I felt more alive than I ever had in either life. As I was packing up, the bookstore owner approached me. Emma, that was wonderful. We sold every copy we had in stock, but I wanted to give you something. She handed me a small wrapped box. What's this? Open it. Inside was a vintage fountain pen, nothing fancy, but clearly well-loved. This was my grandmother's, the owner said. She was a writer too, never published, but she wrote every day until she died. I've been saving it for someone special. I think she'd want you to have it. I felt my throat tighten. I can't accept this. You can and you will. You remind me of her. That fire, that determination to tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Take it. Use it to write something beautiful. I took the pen, holding it carefully. Thank you. I'll treasure it. That night in my apartment, I laid out my collection on my desk. Grandma Rose's pen, stolen and then replaced by the estate when Victoria had to return it as part of the legal settlement. The Mont Blanc from Margaret, my absurd $30,000 Baroque masterpiece. And now this new vintage pen given with love from one writer to another. I picked up Grandma's pen and opened my laptop. My third book was due to my editor in 4 months, and I had only 50 pages drafted. I started typing, the words flowing faster than I could think them, the story pouring out of me like it had been waiting my whole life, both lives, to be told. This one was about rebirth, about second chances, about what happens when you refuse to be erased. I wrote until dawn, until my fingers ached and my eyes burned, until the story was real and alive on the page. And when I finally stopped, I saved the document, backed it up to 3 separate cloud drives, and smiled. Victoria had taken my pen once, in a life I'd left behind, but now I had an entire collection, each one worth more than anything she'd ever owned. And this time, no one could take them from me, because they weren't just pens. They were proof that I existed, that I mattered, that I'd won. My third book, Born Again in Spite, sold in a heated auction for $500,000. The publisher ordered a first printing of 300,000 copies. It debuted at #1 on the Times list. I was 25 years old, technically 50 in total, and I'd never been more alive. The book tour took me across the country, sold out events in 20 cities, festival appearances, panels with authors I'd idolized, award nominations, and everywhere I went, I carried my pens. At a signing in Portland, a young woman came through my line, crying. "Your book saved me," she said. "I have a sister like yours." Reading about how you survived it, how you thrived, it gave me permission to leave to build my own life. Thank you. I signed her book. You deserve to take up space. Never forget that. In Chicago, a journalist asked me about Victoria during an interview. "Do you have any relationship with your sister now?" "No," I said, and I'm at peace with that. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is create distance from people who hurt you, even if they're family. Especially if they're family. Do you think she's read your books? I know she has. She told me so. I hope they helped her understand what she did. But that's not why I wrote them. I wrote them for me, and for everyone else who's been erased by someone they loved. The interview ran in a major magazine with the headline, "Emma Chen on Family Forgiveness and Why You Don't Owe Anyone a Second Chance." It went viral. I gained 100,000 Instagram followers in a week. Victoria sent me a friend request on every platform. I declined them all. Mom sent a letter to my publisher asking them to forward it to me. They asked if I wanted it. I said no. I was done being available to people who'd only noticed me when I became too successful to ignore. 2 years after The Favorite Daughter's initial publication, I attended the film premiere. Red carpet, flashbulbs, reporters shouting my name. I wore a custom gown that cost $15,000 and carried a small beaded clutch. Inside the clutch, Grandma Rose's pen for luck. The actress who played the protagonist found me at the after party. "Your book changed my life," she said when I read the script, I knew I had to do it. That scene where she finally tells her sister that she's done being small, I cried for an hour after reading it. "You brought her to life," I said. "Thank you for understanding her." The movie was good. Not perfect, but honest and raw and emotionally devastating in the right ways. The audience at the premiere was silent during the climactic confrontation scene, where the protagonist finally exposes her sister's theft and manipulation in front of their entire family. When the credits rolled, the applause was thunderous. I sat in the dark theater, tears streaming down my face, and felt 7 years of pain finally release its grip on my chest. I'd done it. I'd taken my story back. I'd made it matter. And no one, not Victoria, not Mom, not anyone, could take that away from me. 5 years after my rebirth, I was a millionaire. 7 books published, 4 bestsellers, 2 film adaptations, a TV series in development. I'd bought a house in upstate New York, a beautiful old Victorian with a library on the 2nd floor. I'd filled it with books and art and furniture I actually liked, not whatever was cheapest at IKEA. I'd started a foundation for young writers from low-income backgrounds, offering grants and mentorship. I'd funded 50 scholarships so far. I'd dated, casually, nothing serious. I'd learned in my first life that I didn't need romance to feel complete. I had friends, real friends, who knew my story and loved me anyway. I had a career I'd built with my own hands, my own words, my own stubborn refusal to disappear. And I had my pens, dozens of them now, some valuable, some sentimental, each one a marker of a different moment in my journey. But my favorite was still Grandma Rose's pen. The one Victoria had stolen, the one I'd gotten back. I used it to sign every contract, every dedication page, every important document. It was my talisman. My reminder that I'd survived and thrived despite everything designed to keep me small. One morning, 5 years after everything, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a book, a self-published memoir with a simple cover, a photograph of 2 young girls holding hands, their faces turned away from the camera. The title, The Other Sister, A Story of Jealousy, Regret, and Learning to Live with Loss. By Victoria Chen. I almost threw it away, almost, but curiosity won. I opened it and read the first page. My sister Emma is a famous author. She writes about family and betrayal and survival. She writes about me, though she never uses my name. I am the villain in her stories, and I've spent 5 years learning to accept that I earned that role. This is my attempt to understand why. This is my apology, written in the only language I've learned to speak with any honesty, the truth. I read the whole book in one sitting. It was raw and unflinching. Victoria didn't spare herself. She wrote about her jealousy, her manipulation, her desperate need to be the center of attention. She wrote about our childhood and our mother's favoritism and how she'd leveraged it for her own benefit. She wrote about trying to steal my manuscript and the aftermath, the lawsuits, the public shaming, the collapse of her entire self-image. She wrote about therapy, about working minimum wage jobs to support herself, about slowly, painfully learning to build a life based on her own merit instead of stealing from others. She wrote about reading my books and seeing herself as I saw her, and finally understanding the damage she'd caused. The last chapter was a letter to me. Emma, it began, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to read this. I don't even expect you to care, but I needed to write it. I needed to own what I did and who I was and how I hurt you. I'm sorry. I'm so profoundly sorry. You deserved better than me as a sister. You deserved better than all of us. I'm glad you found the strength to leave. I'm glad you found success. I'm glad you told your story. I hope someday I can tell you this in person, but I understand if that day never comes. Be well, little sister. You earned every bit of your beautiful life. Victoria. I closed the book and set it on my desk next to my collection of pens. I didn't cry, didn't feel anger or satisfaction or vindication. I felt neutral, like closing a book I'd already read, one that no longer had the power to hurt me. I picked up my laptop and drafted an email. Victoria, I received your memoir. I read it. I appreciate your honesty, and I hope writing it brought you some peace. I've found mine. I wish you well, but I'm not interested in resuming contact. I hope you can understand. Emma. I sent it before I could second-guess myself. She responded 3 hours later. I understand. Thank you for reading it. That's more than I deserved. Be happy, Emma. And that was it. The final chapter in the Victoria saga. I deleted the email, made myself a cup of tea, and got back to work on my 8th novel. This one wasn't about family or revenge or betrayal. It was about a woman who'd been given a second chance at life and built something beautiful from the ashes of her first attempt. It was about rebirth and resilience and the quiet, powerful act of choosing yourself. It was about me. And for the first time in both my lives, I was writing from a place of joy instead of pain. 10 years after my rebirth, I was invited to give the keynote speech at a major writers' conference. I stood in front of 1,000 aspiring authors and told them my story. Not the sanitized version, not the press release version, but the real one. I told them about dying at 25, alone and forgotten. I told them about being reborn and using that knowledge to protect myself. I told them about Victoria and Mom and the years of being erased. I told them about choosing to write my truth anyway, even when people tried to steal it. And I told them about the moment I realized I'd won. Not because I'd become famous or wealthy, but because I'd refused to disappear. Your story is yours, I said, my voice carrying across the silent auditorium. Protect it fiercely. Document everything. Don't let anyone convince you that your voice doesn't matter. And if someone tries to take credit for your work, fight back. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to be seen. You are allowed to tell the truth, even when it makes people uncomfortable. The applause was deafening. Afterward, a line of people waited to talk to me. They shared their stories of stolen work and manipulative family members and being told they weren't good enough. I listened to every single one. To each person, I said the same thing. You deserve to take up space. Write your story, protect your work, and never, ever let anyone make you smaller to accommodate their ego. I signed books for 3 hours. My hand cramped, my feet hurt in my heels. I'd never been happier. As I was leaving the venue, my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Emma Chen? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. Speaking. This is Rebecca Moore from the Pulitzer Committee. I'm calling to inform you that The Favorite Daughter has been selected as a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in Fiction. Congratulations. I stopped walking. I'm sorry, what? She laughed. I know it's a shock. The official announcement will be made public tomorrow, but we wanted to give you advance notice. The committee was unanimous. Your work is extraordinary, Ms. Chen. You should be very proud. I thanked her somehow and hung up. Then I sat down on a bench outside the convention center and cried. Not from sadness or relief or even joy exactly, from completion. In my first life, I died believing I was worthless, that I'd wasted my potential, that I'd let Victoria win. In this life, I'd been given the impossible gift of a second chance, and I'd used it to build something that mattered. I'd taken the pen Victoria stole and replaced it with an empire of words. I'd turned pain into art, silence into voice, invisibility into undeniable presence. I'd won. Not against Victoria, not really. She was just a person, flawed and human, and ultimately unimportant to my success. I'd won against the version of myself who'd believed she didn't deserve to be seen. I'd won against the voice that said I wasn't good enough, wasn't talented enough, wasn't worth the effort. I'd won against the world that tried to erase me. And sitting on that bench with my phone full of congratulatory messages and my life full of purpose, I finally understood what Grandma Rose had tried to tell me when she gave me that pen all those years ago in my first life. Writing is power, she'd said. It's the power to exist on your own terms. Don't ever let anyone take that from you. I hadn't understood it then, but I understood it now. I pulled out my phone and texted Margaret, "We need to talk about the Pulitzer." She responded immediately. "I know. I was about to call you. Champagne tomorrow." Champagne tomorrow. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and walked back to my hotel. In my room, I opened my laptop and looked at the document I'd been working on, my 9th novel, the one about transformation and power and refusing to be small. I'd been stuck on the ending for weeks, but now, suddenly, I knew exactly how it ended. The protagonist, after years of fighting and surviving and building her empire, sits down at her desk. She picks up a pen, not just any pen, but the one she'd reclaimed from the person who tried to erase her. And she writes, not for revenge, not for validation, not even for success. She writes because she can, because she exists, because her voice matters, because she refused to disappear. I typed the final lines of my novel, tears streaming down my face. She picked up the pen and began to write, and this time, finally, no one could stop her. I saved the document, backed it up, and closed my laptop. Then I pulled out Grandma Rose's pen from my purse and held it up to the light. It was just a pen. Old, worn, imperfect. But it had witnessed 2 lifetimes. It had survived theft and recovery and vindication. It had written the story of a girl who refused to stay dead. And tomorrow, when the Pulitzer announcement went public, it would become a part of literary history, just like me. I set the pen carefully on the hotel desk and smiled. "We did it, Grandma," I whispered. "We fucking did it." And somewhere, in whatever place exists beyond this life, I hoped she was smiling too. Because her granddaughter, the one who'd been overlooked and underestimated and erased, had taken up all the space she'd been denied, and she'd done it with a pen.